It was a momentous time for America's Dan Gurney in June 1967, 50 years ago. He won Le Mans with a long-tail 7-litre Ford Mark IV, and then a week later, the Belgian Grand Prix with his own car, the gorgeous Eagle-Weslake. Here are a few facts you need to know about Daniel Sexton Gurney. Dan's father, John, was a respected bass baritone with New York's Metropolitan Opera and sang the national anthem at the opening Long Beach Grand Prix. Dan served in Korea as a mechanic in the 78 AAA Gun Battalion. At the wheel of his works Ferrari, Dan was the first Formula One driver ever to take the Avus banking flat out, 1959 German Grand Prix. He met his current wife, Evie, in the offices of Huschke von Hanstein, the Porsche racing manager. Her car had broken down, so Dan offered her a lift back to Stuttgart that night. His greatest drive was probably in the 62 German Grand Prix, when he drove virtually the whole race in his Porsche with his leg jammed up against the battery, which had become dislodged. Simultaneously, Dan had to operate the clutch and withstand the forces, lateral and vertical, generated by the quick laps of the Nürburgring. And it was also wet, so visibility was bad. Despite this, Dan still managed to finish third, 4.4 seconds behind the leader Graham Hill, who had John Surtees just behind him. After leading the 64 Belgian Grand Prix from the pole, his Brabham Climax ran out of fuel on the last lap. While racing Formula One, Dan commuted across the Atlantic, racing NASCAR stock cars, Trans Am saloon cars, Can-Am sports cars, and Indy cars. He scored the first Formula One wins for both Porsche and Brabham. If the steering wheel is a clock face, Dan always drove with his right hand between 1 and 2 o'clock and his left between 7 and 8 o'clock, with his elbow clamped into his ribcage. The object was to have his right hand at 12 o'clock when he was turning to the left, and thus be more able to fight the inevitable bumps on the circuits of those days with a strong forearm. After winning Le Mans in 1967 with the Ford Mark IV, Dan made international history by spraying the Moet champagne over the photographers below the podium, and then over Henry Ford II, who was present at Le Mans with his new bride. Graham Hill did the same thing, did the same spraying after winning the 66 Australian Grand Prix at Lakeside, but little of it was captured by the cameras, and so Dan really takes that place in history. Dan's cousin James is the author of the well-known illustrated book series Dinotopia. Dan is one of only 3 drivers ever to win a World Championship Formula One race in his own car, the Eagle in his case. The others are Jack Brabham and Bruce McLaren, although John Surtees, of course, did win the non-championship Alton Park Gold Cup. Car and Driver magazine's David E. Davis once led a light-hearted campaign for Dan to be President of the United States. When it quickly gathered strength, Dan was asked about his policies. His response: "I want one day a year when we don't have to run silencers or mufflers on any of the cars." All American Racers still operates from the same Santa Ana, California premises that produced the Eagle race cars from '65 onwards. Today, the core businesses run by Dan's son, Justin, are Carbon Composite, drones, key landing elements of the SpaceX program, and Dan's Alligator motorcycles, of course. Dan's youngest son, Alex, raced Formula 3 in Europe before winning 2 Grand Am championships in the USA. Very quick driver, has a photographic memory too. Dan has a significant aerodynamic part, the Gurney flat, named after him. He created it during a test session at the Phoenix Speedway with Eagle driver Bobby Unser. Dan was the first driver to wear a full-face helmet, the Bell Star, in Formula One. Dan once offered a prize fund of $100,000 to any F1 driver or car that could lap the Nürburgring faster than his Offie-powered Indy Eagle. Nobody in Formula One was brave enough to take up the challenge. When asked about the importance of aerodynamics on today's cars, Dan once replied, "I would love to be a particle of air split by a wing designed by Adrian Newey."